So right now, we're going to share a special story with you. It's a story of both of our testimonies. Again, my name is Colton Atrave, and this is my awesome girlfriend.
Hi everyone, my name is Priscilla, and Colton is going to start off with his testimony first.
So about a year and a half ago, I was 100% atheist. If you don't know what that means, what it means is like you don't believe in anything spiritual. You believe that, like I believe that we're here on this earth. I don't really know what happens, and after you die, it was a great life. So, I grew up going to a huge mega church in Orange County, and I remember watching the Veggie Tales when I was little and seeing and knowing that like the stories, but it seemed to me just like another cartoon that you watch on Nickelodeon.
Those were seeds planted, Laura, so thank you.
Yeah. So that was me growing up, and we go to church when I was younger, and then once my parents divorced when I was about 11 years old, my dad, we stopped going. So we stopped going, and years later, I just became an atheist. I didn't see anything that would even resemble what a Christian would be. And I even had a really close family member of mine who I remember would always proclaim to everybody her faith. But then if you actually looked at her life, it didn't demonstrate anything of what it says in the Bible. So I always thought hypocritically of what a Christian does, right? They go to church, they go on Sunday, and they tell everybody how good they are, except you look at their life and they're hurting people. So I actually tried to avoid that at all costs when I was younger, and even when I was older, because I just never wanted to do that. And then, when I was 25 or 26, I randomly met this girl on Instagram. So I slid into her DM. If you know what that means, it just means you send somebody a direct message. I was scrolling through hashtags of Laguna Beach, and I saw this beautiful girl, and I was like, oh my gosh. So all I did was follow her. I followed her, and I think
when I got the follow, all I saw was 6'7" volleyball player, so of course I followed back.
Yeah, and I saw a picture of her playing beach volleyball, and I was really excited. So long story short, we start talking, and eventually we meet up. We go on our first date, I would say maybe like 2 or 3 months after we started talking. And
maybe 2 months after.
Maybe like 2 months.
You were traveling a lot.
I was traveling a lot with my friend Ian for business. And at this first date...
can I tell this story?
Yeah.
Okay, so for the first date, it was probably the worst date of my life. I love you. So he picks me up, looks so handsome, smells so good, opens my car door, does everything perfect. I was just like, oh Lord, I'm scared. I don't know his background, if he's a Christian or anything. We talked a little bit on social media and through Snapchat, and I said, do you go to church? And he never seemed, I just didn't know where, and me spiritually, I wasn't mature yet, and now going back, I would have been like, why would I even go on a first date with somebody that I don't even know about their spiritual background? So went on a first date, he picked me up, we go to Las Brisas in Laguna, which was one of my favorite places, and we sit down, and he literally says in the first 2 minutes of our date, so are you a 30-year-old virgin? And I was like, well, I'm not having sex anymore, and I'm actually going to wait until I'm married, but no, I'm not a virgin. And he got up off of the table, and he was gone for a good 10 minutes, I would say, and I actually thought that I was left and needed to take an Uber home. And then I realized after panicking a little bit at the table that his keys and his wallet were at the end. So I was like, okay, well, there's no more date.
That's why I stayed.
At least.
That's why I stayed. No, I'm just kidding.
At least that's why he stayed, because of his keys and wallet. I was like, okay, this date's over, whatever. It's not going to go anywhere. So he sits down, and we had a real conversation. He said that Just so you know, I smoke weed all the time, and he was going on his drinks too. And I was on the table, and let me tell you, not perfect whatsoever at this date. And I told him, I was like, I want to date a Christian man. I'm ready to get married. I'm ready for kids. This is what I want. Super honest. And he said, that's everything that I don't want. I don't think about marriage. I don't think about kids. I'm all about business. And at the end of the night, I obviously knew that this wasn't going anywhere. Clearly, he was on one end of the spectrum. I was on the other end. And at the end of the night, when we were saying goodbye, he tells me, just so you know, I'm not going to play any games with you. I want to see you, and I'm going to call you tomorrow. And I was kind of in shock because I was like, why? Everything just went over his head. I don't know. So I was really confused when I went home that night. And then the next day he called me and he wanted to hang out again. And obviously so bad I wanted to hang out with him, but I knew, I was like, no way. I'm trying to grow in my faith spiritually, and I know that this is going to set me back if I do hang out with him. So he kept messaging me and calling me, and I just told him, I cannot talk to you whatsoever. You're a really great guy, but just this isn't going to work out for me. So the only way that he can talk to me one time was, he said, asking me questions about the Bible, like, why do you believe in this? How do you know that the Bible's true? Why do you even go to church? And he asked me some really, really, really hard questions that I had no idea how to answer. And I was going to Rock Harbor at the time, and Colton asked me if he can go to church with me. And I was like, heck no, I'm trying to find somebody at church, and this 6'7" man is going to sit next to me.
Okay, so we missed a little something. So kind of what happened, yes, we were talking back and forth, but it came back where I got really upset with her, and then she kind of was messaging me back saying like, oh, could we just like meet up and resolve everything? Because I sent like really mean text messages to her. So when we met up again, just for like, I think it was like for lunch, she asked me, why aren't you a Christian, or why aren't you a believer? And the only response I could say was, I guess I'm just lazy. I haven't figured out why I'm an atheist or why I'm not an atheist. There's a whole bunch of things that I haven't got answered.
So then he comes to me with the questions, and I had no idea how to answer them. He wanted to know every religion, what's the difference? And I was like, wow, I need to grow spiritually. I want to know these questions and be prepared when somebody does ask me this. So it's been a journey together, growing spiritually from where we met each other. Where do we want to pick up from there?
Yeah. So we were going to Rock Harbor. I kept going on Sundays and learning more. And I kind of, in the very beginning, I kind of had an ego about it. And I was like, I'm on what I thought, some people call it blind faith. And I could kind of see that's what Priscilla had. She had a faith about, her relationship with God that didn't have any logic behind it. Mm-hmm. And that was something that I was like, okay, I don't want blind faith. And the first thing I kind of did, I was like, how silly as it sounds, like, I'm going to prove this girl wrong, and I'm actually going to make her, stop becoming a Christian because of all this information I found out. That's what I thought in the very beginning. And within 3 days, I stumped her on multiple questions that she couldn't answer. And in myself, I was like, yes, I stumped her. But at the same time, once I stumped her with those questions, I actually wanted to get those answered. So it kind of gave me a fire to actually figure out, I really actually want to know this though. Yes, that's cool. I did win this little thing, right? But I really wanted to learn everything. I remember the first question I had, I said, here's the Bible right here. I said, okay, so if there's different guys who wrote this book, what I want to know is, let's say God came to me last night and I wrote a book called the Book of Colton, and I think it's God derived. I want to put it in the Bible tomorrow. I need to go to the person who made this thing and I want to have the Book of Colton here. Why can't I have that? And I learned, we learned that there's something called, it was like the Codex of Laodicea, or the canon process. And it was a group of Christian members who actually put together the Bible 300 years after the death of Jesus. And they were actually looking through multiple scriptures, and there was books that they actually didn't allow in the Bible. Like, there's certain books they just didn't even think were God derived. So that's how they came up with all the different authors, and they read through them, and they prayed over it, and they really tried to figure out, are these books, because God didn't write this, this is all written by man, but they had to figure out, did God flow through these men, and are these God's words? So that's how this came to be. So that was my first question that I figured out.
Yeah, so how he figured that question out was he's super, super into his business, super busy. So to get his time, it's very hard. And at the time we were going to church, so to take out time to go to church was challenging for him, because that was 2 hours of his Sunday that he could be doing the stuff that he normally was doing. So I was at church on Sunday. He didn't come one weekend, and Josh was preaching, or somebody was preaching, and they said, if you know anybody that's asking you questions that you can't answer, we have something called Alpha. And it's a 8-week, it's been a while, so I don't know the details, 7-week series, 6 weeks, and it's like 3 hours every Tuesday night or something, and you go in, and it's a safe place to talk about if you're an atheist, if you're agnostic, if you're a Christian, but you don't know why, any questions, and they have a dinner, and they go and explain details, and that was one of them, of who wrote the Bible and everything. And so he went to Alpha, and I kind of try to keep my distance from him, because obviously the attraction was there and everything, and I didn't want to do the same thing that I've always done in my past. And this time I was just like, no, when I date somebody, he's going to be a Christian, a man of God, and I don't want to get entangled in this trap. So kept my distance from him, and he went through Alpha, and after Alpha he said, there's no way, this is crazy. I remember him saying something like, Jesus is just another sand and something, and a piece of sand or something like that. And he just wasn't having it. He said it was, what's the Harry Potter?
Yeah, I mean, Alpha was great because it gives you the ability to just be open with people, but the structure of the actual course was never to really answer the questions. So I would come with really hard questions, and no one would really answer anything. It was kind of just an open debate, oh, what do you think happens? Oh, what do you think? Well, maybe they could be this, maybe it could be that, and it puts you in a frame of mind where it's okay, it's open for debate, and everyone has their own opinion, and it gets you thinking and getting more of a desire to seek, and a desire, I feel to do your own research outside, which it did. It started doing that. So.
Yeah, that was amazing. It planted so many seeds. And there's a book out there called Tactics, and Tactics is the same thing, on asking questions to get people to start thinking and finding out their own observations and information. So after that, I told Colt.
Yeah, and that's Tactics by Greg Koukl. I had the book upstairs. I should have brought it.
I know. I listen to it all the time on Audible. So after Alpha, I was, he said, there's no way, I don't believe in this. And I said, okay, I have to cut it off right here, as hard as it was. I told him we can't stop, hanging out and talking about this. He needs to go to his friends and figure it out himself. I pointed him in the direction, and I was just praying, Lord, this man is not mine. He's yours. And I just interceded for him and prayed for him so much, because, man, I just knew his heart. There was something there that I wanted God to get a hold of him so bad. And obviously you can't love people into heaven, but I did my best on pointing him in the direction, and that was it. Cut it off. And then, so we completely cut it off, and that was very, very hard for me to do, but it was a complete act of obedience. I knew that I was going to set myself back if I started tangling myself up in this, and I trusted God with everything. That I just prayed that even if I don't end up with him, that his heart would just soften for the Lord, because he was just so lost from the first night that I met him, and my heart just broke for him. So after 2 months without talking, I get a phone call from him. And he was...
Want me to go?
Yeah.
Okay, so we ended up, stopped talking, and at that time, I had such a desire to get all these questions answered. So it was really weird, because I run with a lot of extremely successful entrepreneurs, people who are in their young 20s, and now I'm in my later 20s, but this was a couple years ago, but people in their mid to young 20s who are making more money than in a month than most people make in a year. So it was weird because we obviously, go to the same events and marketing events and all these entrepreneur events. So we knew of each other, and we started kind of reaching out to people in Texas and in different states. And it was interesting because all these guys that we know of each other, we don't technically work with each other, but we started kind of talking, and it was really interesting because a lot of us delve extremely into personal development, and a lot of us go extremely into certain things like the law of attraction, certain things, how to gain awareness of discipline, self-discipline, and achievement. So we're always kind of reading the same books and stuff like that. And if you're in that circle, you know the authors, the speakers, and everything like that. A lot of us, though, started getting into different types of teaching, and even if you might know it, I went to this millionaire's house, multiple millionaire, like almost, and I met a guy there, and I befriended him, and I knew that he was different because he knew everything I knew, but to another level. And right when he started talking, I was like fascinated by this guy. And we started becoming friends, and I knew that he was in a secret society. I just knew because I heard about them before on like certain YouTube videos and online, and I knew this guy had to be in one. I just got the feeling, certain things he was saying, and at the time I was kind of excited because I thought I wanted to be in a secret society. I remember telling my friends, my business partners, like, dude, I think I met a guy in a secret society. I hope he invites me in. This seems so cool. Because what I thought it was, on the outside, you really think that it is a brotherhood, kind of like a frat of really successful people who share ideas, business ideas, to make each other more successful. So, at the time, over the years, we had a small falling off. But at this time, I thought the best thing to do would be to figure out, how I would get a pastor, the most Christian guy I know, probably the biggest anti-religious or anti-Christian person I know. And I found some pastors, and I knew this one guy, right? And I would ask them both a question, and I would kind of just sit back and see, what sounds right to me. Who won that little argument, right? The dinosaur argument. Is Jesus real argument? Did he come back argument? Is God real? All these arguments, right? And then, so it got to the point where I would guess you could say, my old acquaintance, he wrote a book, and he says, you know what, Colton, I would love to answer all your questions, but please read my book, because I actually address most of them in that book. So I brought my book with me on a cruise with my mom, and I was like, I gotta just devour this book. And
what book was that? Sorry.
His book. Yeah.
Okay.
So I just don't want to mention it because it's not a good book.
Got it.
Yeah, you don't want to look at it. So the biggest thing was I sit down at the table, and right when I sit down, there is a guy there that says something that only this other guy says, and I'm just telling you, this guy is different, he speaks different, and right when he said that, you just know that something, it was just kind of no one says that. So I looked at him, I was like, it's really weird you said that, because I only know one guy who's ever said anything about that. And then the guy at the table kind of looks at me, and he knows he kind of said something he shouldn't have. And he says, let's talk about this in private. So we talk about this in private, and he actually, the first thing he does, the next day, he says, who's recruiting you? And I was just, I knew what he said, what he was meaning with that, about secret societies. So I was like, well, I gave him the guy's name. And then he goes, oh, I know this guy. That guy's not good. So I started to learn more and more. And what this guy actually revealed to me was what a lot of these Freemason and esoteric Mason societies actually do once you're on the inside. And it's really scary. And one of the biggest things I learned is that a lot of them actually do have a God. And a lot of them, they just say, oh no, you can do it yourself. this is for achievement, like this is what you have to do. But once you're on the inside, they actually all worship Lucifer, Satan, the devil. It freaked me out when I found out this stuff. And it was so funny because he kept digging for info and digging, and I was telling him everything I knew, and then he kind of put all these little pieces together that when you're on the outskirts, you don't see. And then it was crazy because this grown man like was crying to me, and I believed that he believed all this stuff. I mean, some of the stuff they were doing, it's like you wish that you got tortured than some of the stuff that they were doing. Like, it was really demonic stuff. And right when that happened, I went from an atheist to agnostic, just from learning everything that these people were doing. So what that really did, it actually made me believe in demons and believe in the devil, like, immediately. And I still didn't believe in God yet, or Jesus or anything like that. But I knew if I keep going down this route of searching for success in this person's, way to get it, I know where it ends up. And it really scared me. I'm like, who wants to end up in the dark, right? In just in evil. So that's when I was like, okay, is Jesus, like, is God the light? Like, I don't know. So what I started to do, I was like, maybe it's Buddhism, maybe it's, Confucius.
Interrupt you real quick. So a good question that I asked him, because I knew the answer to it, but a good question that I asked him, I said, if you believe in evil and if you believe in demons, don't you believe that there's a good if there's a bad? Mm-hmm. And that, I remember you said that helped you.
Yeah. So I just started, looking, is Jesus real? Is God real? Like, I had no hidden agendas. I really wanted to say, I'm an atheist because of this, this, and this, or I'm Christian because of this, this, and this. I just wanted it to be done with it because I just wanted to be convicted about something. And I remember I started calling all of the people I ever knew who were like firm, on fire believers. And I would call them and I said, hey, can you sell me on this whole Christian thing? And they're kind of laughing. I was like, no, it seems like a sale to me. Can you just like sell me? So I started to like bring them the coffee and they like just asked them like, so why are you a Christian? What do you believe? And some people, I was like, it really bugged me when people had blind faith because I was like, you're just not giving me any logic. Mm-hmm. I remember I even went up to one of the pastors at this one church, and I said, man, like, there's just not a lot of logic with all these stories in the Bible. It seems like I'm reading a Harry Potter book. It was just so supernatural, like people living in Wales and people talking to a burning bush. I was like, what? Like, so I talked to one of my friends, Steve Carlson, and but actually before I get that, I want to go back to the whole Freemasonry thing. After I left that cruise, I researched it, I found videos, I found research that what this guy was telling me was 100% true, and it was freaking me out. And I started to Google all these people who were Freemasons, and I actually had some of their books in my house that I was reading, success books. And it's just scary because they give you all these half-truths. Like, they kind of give you like 99% of the truth and 1% off. So it's like so it's kind of like it's a little off, right? Like 1 degree, but just like that one saying, like, where would a ship be if it was 1 degree off after a couple years? But they say like, hey, this is what we think. And then you kind of like agree, you're like, yeah, I could see that, and then give you another one. And eventually, like, over time, they keep kind of like pushing you around. Eventually, you do a whole 180, and that's how they get you. Because so I learned all that, freaked me out. I'm staying far away from that, but now I'm like, I'm trying to interview like other religions now, like, And I remember my friend Steve.
We're getting somewhere now. Now he believes that there is a God. You don't know which one.
Not really. So then, I haven't read this yet, but my buddy Steve has, and he said this great thing to me. He said that, Jesus is either a liar, he's a lunatic, he's crazy, or he's a Lord. He's actually a God. So I think it all centered around was Jesus a man? Did he come to earth? Did he actually die, and did he come back to life? Mm-hmm. And then I think it came to the point where he talked about, it was really hard for me to relate with stories of Jesus because he is a God and I'm not. So how can I listen and agree with somebody who's not like me. Like, but I could relate with this one story of Peter. So Peter was a disciple of Jesus, and what he did, he followed him around for 4 years. And what Peter did, which was so interesting to me, was right when they captured Jesus, they look at Peter and they said, do you know this man? And he denied him 3 times. And to me, I didn't really understand that. I was like, if you're going to leave your family, leave your job, leave your friends, and follow somebody around, yet you don't have 100% faith that he is like your God, like why would, like you're so skeptical, Peter. Like I don't even think I could be that skeptical. I probably would have just went home after like a couple months. I wouldn't have wasted my 20s to hang out with this guy. So, but the crazy thing was, so Peter denied him, right? So just proving that he was lukewarm, 70% in, doubting, skeptical. After he believed, right? So Jesus came back, from what the story says, and Peter saw Jesus, touched him, pulled his hair, like, is this really happening? Like, imagine if like, your best friend, right? Like the person you're hanging around the most time with dies, and you see them come back to life. He was willing to not only start, believing in Jesus as his God, but he was willing to get tortured. And I don't know if any of you guys have got tortured, but I've worked out really hard before.
CrossFit.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, like if you're getting tortured, like you are for something that he could have just verbally denied Jesus again, but he didn't, because he really believed that Jesus came back to life. The next thing was just Paul. And Paul, what I kind of learned was he was kind of like the Hitler of Christians. He actually went from town to town to just slaughter Christians for believing in their faith. And Jesus came to him, and after he came to him, what ended up happening was he blinded him, and then God gave him back his sight. And not only did that just happen, but Paul completely changed. And he was one of the number 1 apostles, where he actually wrote the majority of the books in the New Testament. And I thought that was so interesting. I'm like, imagine you're in 4th grade in social studies, and you're learning about Hitler, or you're learning about like Osama bin Laden, or you're learning about all these evil people who just committed massive genocides, just like Paul. But they changed. Like imagine you hearing Hitler say, I changed my mind, I actually want to become Jewish, I want to actually start building temples, or you meet Osama bin Laden, right? He's like, yeah, I actually want to move to America and run for mayor and marry an American woman. It's like, it would be crazy to hear those things, but that's what Paul did. So I really believed that those encounters had to happen, those supernatural encounters had to happen. And that really gave me a lot of logic to really make a better decision.
Mm-hmm. So real quick, the people that, when I wasn't there, because I planted the seed, but I had nothing to do with your salvation. So who are the people? I remember you saying Isaac, Steve Carlson.
Yeah, my friend Isaac, my friend Steve Carlson.
Todd White.
Todd White was really big. And then the last one was actually, during there was a month of this too, I had 3, when 3 people tell you to do things that don't know each other, like you should probably go. So it was Priscilla, it was my mom, and it was one of my business partners, Lisana. They all said I should go to counseling. Because I learned you can't...
Wait, that was after.
That was the same process. That was during it.
Really? Before you got saved? Mm-hmm. Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I was going to a counselor before I got saved, and I was, I guess, working through a lot of issues that I had with my dad and my mom in the past through divorce and a lot of family struggle. And what it really did, it helped me stop seeing God as like the authority figure, as I was, I was blaming certain scenarios in the past. Like I was looking at God the way I looked at my dad. I was looking at God as the way I looked at my mom, because those were my authority figures. And and I had issues with them, and I wasn't forgiving them. And then so I was like, how can I submit to these? I'm horrible with authority figures in the past. I don't even have a boss. Like it's probably the reason I'm an entrepreneur. I haven't had a boss for years. So was a huge realization for me because I don't personally think you can actually come to faith and become a believer and get saved logically, 100%. Because you need to have the willingness to submit to an authority and a willingness to submit to a God. So those are the two biggest things, was the logic I got, and then finally with the counseling. And then, like you said, I had a lot of friends I was talking with during this time. But I'm so in sales and I'm so in my own mind that I remember that there were a lot of guys, I felt like they almost had like a hidden agenda, and maybe you feel this way, that they just wanted to convert you so they could have like a tally on their belt. And I kind of felt that. I don't know if that was true. That's just something I felt. And I really wanted to just to come to somebody who didn't have an agenda to bring me to faith. And I really believe that was my friend Michael Hagan. So I remember one day I called Michael and I said, "Hey Michael, how do I become a Christian? How do I get saved?" And he actually prayed the Romans prayer with me. And now that's why it's one of the biggest things why I actually tab this on my Bible. So he prayed with me, and it was amazing. It was a crazy experience. And then right then I actually called Priscilla. We haven't talked.
So we haven't talked in a couple months, and I just woke up from a nap, and I was completely shocked when I saw his number on my phone. And so I picked up, and it was him on the phone, and he was sounded pretty emotional. And the first words out of his mouth was, "I just got saved." And I was like, "Am I dreaming right now? What's going on?" So I jumped out of bed, and I woke up really quick. And he said, "Can I come over and talk to you? I want to explain how I came to this realization." And he said that he already went through the prayer, he's saved, but he asked me to do the prayer with me too, just because I was a catalyst into pointing him into the right direction. And we hung up the phone, and he lived 10 minutes from me, so I was like, oh my gosh, freaking out, got dressed real quick, and called my aunt. So I'm going to pause your thing right here and share a little bit of my testimony. I did not grow up in a Christian home. My parents were not Christian at all. My mom was 15 years old when she had me, so we grew up more like sisters than mother and daughter. And I ended up moving out at 13 years old, 2 jobs in high school, and super, super independent. And I thought that living a life, being independent, that was the best thing for me, when I had no idea that I just needed to fully depend on God and give up my independence. So the only person that I had in my life that ever pointed me to Jesus was my Aunt Valencia and my cousin Ambria. And my Aunt Lency, she took me to church whenever she could growing up. When I went to her house, there was no question about going to church. And I moved out when I was 13. I lost my virginity at 14. I was getting drunk at 15. House parties, everything. I grew up not in the best area, and I never questioned if Jesus was real. I never questioned Christianity. And I just had these little seeds, and my Aunt Lency would always tell me, you shouldn't be doing that, you shouldn't be doing that, you shouldn't be doing that. And I know that I was convicted my whole life, especially my younger cousin. She's so spiritually mature, and she would always tell me, "Prissy, you know the truth, why are you living like this?" And I remember hitting a rock bottom at 25 years old. I went through a breakup, and I was just felt like I couldn't rely on anybody. I felt really alone. And I knew that God was the only person that I could rely on, but I didn't want to let go of my life. I didn't want to let go of the way I dressed. I didn't want to let go of my dirty mouth. I didn't want to let go of the guys that I was dating, alcohol. And when I surrendered in my bed, I remember just getting on my knees and having my hands out and just completely saying, "Lord, I surrender. I don't know how to live this life, but I want to give my whole life to you. And I don't know how to, but I know that you're faithful, and I know that you'll show me how." Because I had no desire to be around Christians. I had no desire to go to church. I didn't have that desire inside of me. So the first prayer that I had was that, "God, please change my desires." And I prayed that every single day. And from 25 to about 30, it was really, really hard and a really slow change for me. Unfortunately, I went to a church for 10 years that was very, like, tickled my ear and told me things that just was like milk and not food that I needed. And so I started going to Rock Harbor. I just knew, like, okay, I need to change my life. I started going to Rock Harbor. I wanted to get involved, so I started in children's ministry. I wanted to meet new friends. I wanted to be around people that were spiritually more mature than me, just so I can grow and learn from them. And so I went to Rock Harbor. I went on the Uganda missions trip, which was life-changing and took me way out of my comfort zone. And the more I started hearing the message and being around Christian people, I had somebody to emulate and follow. And what else did we do after? What was after Uganda? After Uganda,
Conference.
we went to... so the biggest people that have played a role in my Christian life was my Aunt Valencia, my cousin Ambria, Jack Hibbs for sure at Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills. He has spoke so much truth inside of me, and I feel like I don't know, like I've always been taught very topical things, and with Pastor Jack Hibbs, he just gets straight to the word and always uses the Bible. Like this is what he preaches, and that's why I just wanted more of that. So Colton and I, after going back to Colton's salvation, so he calls me, and he comes over. I get my aunt on the phone, and I'm like, Lindsay, Colton, that guy that I was telling you about, just got saved right now. He's going to come over. He's going to tell me about it, and he wants to go through the prayer with me. Will you help me? And just lead us through it. I felt like I needed somebody else, which you totally don't need somebody else whatsoever. But in this situation, I wasn't sure if Colton was doing it to talk to me or if this was fake. I haven't talked to him in a couple months. I really didn't know. So I wanted kind of like a witness there and not just by myself with him. So got my aunt on the phone, and Colton came over. And my aunt was not easy on him, which was the best way that I've ever seen somebody profess their faith. My aunt got on the phone with him, and she said, are you doing this for Priscilla? What is this about? How did you come to the conclusion that Jesus is real? Why do you want to be a Christian? It was a good hour conversation. And she drilled him and led him through the prayer. And then from there, we were like, okay, so...
And also, too, I didn't really need to do it. I just kind of wanted to, make sure I was official, I guess.
Yeah.
I just wanted to do it from, someone who really knew what they were doing.
Yeah, so... And then another thing, too, I remember Colton's grandfather died, and the only thing that he sent him was a cross with Jesus on it. And I remember that's something that you told me about, too, and showed me, too. Mm-hmm. Which is amazing how God works in our life and speaks to us individually. And so then we were kind of at, okay, now what do we do now? This guy just got saved. I want to grow spiritually in my relationship. I'm with a new believer. And it was a really hard dynamic in the beginning, and I didn't know what to do. So we took it really, really slow. And the times that we saw each other was in church. We did a lot of
eating food together. Yeah,
eating food together, hanging out at church and stuff. And then we went to Rock Harbor. Thank you so much for...
Well, first one, you talked about the conference, but I don't think he actually said. One of the speakers, his name was J. Warner Wallace, and this guy helped me with a lot of the logic I needed. What he did, he was one of the biggest cold case homicide detectives in the world. He's been on Dateline over 4 times, devout atheist. And he actually, one day, he wanted to do a cold case on, did Jesus die and did he come back to life? Because if there was a death, a cold case homicide detective can do what is it called? A study on it, right? Or probably not had the correct word, but he did. And he found out so much evidence. Most of the stuff that most pastors don't know, and they actually don't talk about it. So even if you're watching this and you're a pastor right now, I highly recommend getting his book called Cold Case Christianity. And from what he found out, again, one of the number 1 cold case homicide detectives who's ever lived, he found out for a fact in the court of law, you can actually prove that Jesus was a man, he did die, and he did come back to life. And with all that evidence, this devout atheist who comes from a strong line of atheists actually became a Christian. And that was a huge thing for me to have even more logic that I needed to really come to a conclusion of my faith.
Yeah, I think that's the number one book for anybody that is questioning religion, Christianity, anything. Cold case Christianity for sure. So our dating life was going to these events. So that event was actually at Pastor Jack Hibbs' church. And I just wanted to hang out in a way that, where our foundation would be built on with bricks and not with sand and blow over in a month. Or even if there was a relationship there, I wasn't even sure yet where this was going. And so what we did at Rock Harbor, like I was saying, thank you so much, Rock Harbor, for offering so many different classes and resources. They talked about a Seriously Dating or Engaged class that Roger Tirabassi was going to teach. So we talked about it, and we're like, that would be perfect for our relationship right now. And this book and this class...
I barely know how to be a Christian, let alone how to date as a Christian should date. So.
And I was always trying to spiritually grow, obviously, but at the time it was like, I don't even know if I'm even stable enough to date a new believer. Let me go back. I'm sorry. My roommate, CJ. Thank you, CJ. I love you. CJ lived with me 2 years ago. She goes to Compass Church with Pastor Dr. Mike Fabarez. And this is his study book, and it's called Partners. And this was a pivotal point in my Christian life. This is, amazing truth in here. Let me just read table of contents real quick on what's in here. Being sure about your relationship with God, depending on your knowledge of God, learning to study the Bible on your own, developing an effective prayer life, living a life led by the Holy Spirit, the importance of a good church, being intentional about biblical fellowship, getting actively involved in serving your church, sharing the gospel with people who need it, and living a holy life in an unholy world. So this book is, it took hours to fill this book out. There's a bunch of questions, and it goes straight to Scripture. So that was my first book. This was when I met Colton. And then, so back to Seriously Dating class with Roger Tirabassi. Wow, this completely changed our relationship. After this class, we stopped making out.
Yeah.
So this this class was amazing. It went through our personalities, how to have a relationship that points to Jesus.
This class, too, after this class, I stopped drinking.
That's right. So did you tell everybody how you were before, like when I met you?
No.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Before I was addicted to weed and addicted to drugs. I was addicted to pornography. I was drinking a lot. I was sexually immoral. I was prideful. I was selfish. I did not give anything. I did not give my time. I did not give my money. I did not give my talent unless I was getting paid for it. So it was extremely hard for me. So I had many things that I worked on, and that's where I was before.
And then I believe, last year Colton said, November, we sat down, he got back from the trip, and he said that, I'm thinking about marriage, and we talked about it, and he said, I know that you're the one. And I told him, I need to take some type of class with you first before any engagement, before anything. I need to be sure. I'm 32 years old. I've waited this long. I don't want to rush into anything. So that's why we took this class, Seriously Dating or Engaged. And then after this class, Colton said that we loved Rock Harbor. How about your baptism?
Oh, yeah.
At Rock Harbor.
So after I, prayed the prayer and I confessed that Jesus is my Savior, we ended up going to church. And at our church, I think it was 2 weeks later, they randomly rearranged the whole entire place, and there was like a baptism pool in the middle, and they're like, yep, we're doing baptisms today. So I was really just like, do I get baptized today? Like, is that how it works? I really wanted to like have all my family there. I really wanted to have, my friends there to just kind of show them everything I've learned.
We actually talked about that the weekend before, and we were in the car, and I said, have you thought about baptism? Do you know what it is? And he said, yeah, I want to look into it. I want all of my friends there. I want all my family there. So when we were in service that Sunday, which everybody from Alpha was there, Reza, who else was there from Alpha? A bunch of people from Alpha that were there that heard that he was atheist and agnostic were there in that service, and we always go to different services, so it was awesome for them to see this. But Colton just said that he wants all of his friends and family there, so when they announced it at church, I didn't even think twice that he would go up.
Yeah, and I really thought, I did it. I actually dunked in the pool, and if you guys go on my Facebook, you'll see it had like almost 5,000 people watched it. And I just really thought it was my first step towards obedience to God, and being able to submit and just do the first step and publicly let everybody know, like, this is my Savior.
Mm-hmm. That was an amazing day. Yeah, so what happened next? We took Roger's class. We fell in love with Roger and Becky.
We learned about Becky, we learned about Roger, and then we really liked them. We had no idea that they were pastors. We thought they were marriage counselors. Mm-hmm. So we actually, wanted to pursue them, and we actually started checking out their church, which was called Viewpoint Church. And one of the biggest things that we took out of that was Becky's prayer notebook. Because I think the biggest thing that we had to learn how to do, we actually had to learn how to pray and how to talk to God correctly, the way that He would want us to, the way that it would please Him. So we started, and then the biggest thing too, besides even this, there was always a gentle challenge from both of them, Becky and Roger, to read the Bible every single day, and to, after the whole entire year, to actually finish your Bible. So if you think about that, that's very countercultural. Most churches, the churches that I went to, they never try to challenge people.
I've never been challenged to read my Bible. Because
I just know, like, I feel like a lot of the churches I went to, they were scared of losing members. And I feel like a lot of the churches, they would rather grow a community than actually mature believers. So I'm really grateful of the leadership that we found, and learning how to pray through Becky's prayer notebook.
When we took the Seriously Dating class, I believe it was that class was the first time that they said, can you pick the time in the morning, and if it's 15 minutes, if it's 30 minutes, whatever, to read the daily Bible reading, and to, just do the daily Bible reading, actually, and to do your prayer. And I was just thinking in my head, I was like, wow, an hour. Becky does it an hour every single morning. I was like, wow, an hour? I already feel so busy. And we had to, write a little
promise.
Yeah. On how long we were going to read the Bible for, every morning. And I remember doing
minutes,
that.
Yeah.
And
Becky was challenging everybody to actually spend an hour in prayer and in their Bible.
Did you write 30 minutes?
I think I wrote 60, and then I crossed it out before I signed it, and I wrote 30.
I was like, you better put 60.
Yeah.
So anyways, we use Becky's book, the prayer notebook. And so this just goes in. They have the daily Bible reading online, and we have a Facebook group for that too.
OneYearBibleOnline.com.
Yeah, we have a Facebook group too with a bunch of people that are in there. So we all read it together, comment together, and that takes about 15 minutes. And in the hour, what you do is you have a little notebook right here. You go through praise. So you're praising God. You admit your sins. You write down your requests. Ask God for His plan and will for your life. You give thanks to Him. And then the most important part, you listen, because having a relationship with Him is two-way conversation. So sitting down and listening, and that takes some maturity to do that, and just to sit still. So this has been a game changer for me too, absolutely, that hour. And I have more time on my plate than I did before my hour. And just being in the Word and being with God for this hour in the very beginning of the day has changed my day dramatically. Agree?
Agree.
Yeah? Cool. So, yeah.
So I really appreciate, you taking the time to listen to this. If any of the tools that kind of caught your eye, go back, rewind, pause, grab them. And if you think that anybody needs to hear our story, share it with them. Grab the link, tag somebody, whether it's on Facebook or whether it's on YouTube, grab the URL, and then share it with them. Because I think this is the biggest gift that I'm so thankful Priscilla, gave. Well, she didn't give me anything. She showed me everything that I needed to get showed, and she encouraged me the whole time. But the biggest gift was from God, that He gave His Son to be willingly sacrificed to pay for my sins, so I could spend eternity with God. And I'm just like so grateful that ever happened. I really love you for that too.
I love you too. And just to tell you guys, when somebody becomes a Christian, you don't live the same life. You completely respond to the gospel and to the way God wants you to live. So our lives have changed dramatically.
And we'll continue to change.
Yeah. So Colton,
we don't control our lives anymore.
Yeah. So Colton has given up, all of those things. And I remember Roger said, don't even think about getting married until that person has been sober for 1 year. And we've committed to that, and that was huge. So thank you so much, Roger and Becky, for everything that you're doing in our life through Viewpoint. And we just thank Viewpoint too. And we're excited for the new message too, From Good to Great in God's Eyes. That's the new book that we're going to go through. And also, just real quick before we go, I just wanted to go through the gospel with you, because that's what we're supposed to share as Christians, and to be obedient to. We need to share our testimonies with everybody. We wanted to get this out to you. This has nothing to do with Colton and I. This has everything to do with God and what He's doing in our life. So it has nothing to do with us. And we are sharing this story just in case you know somebody that's atheist or can relate to us. And that is the reason we did this. So I'm going to open up my partner's book. This is something that I go to all the time for my reference. Where is it? And I'm sure a lot of you, I just talked to somebody too that said she reached out to me over social media, and she sent me a letter from her friend saying that why he's not a Christian anymore. And I read through it and I responded to her, and she agreed with what I said. And I actually used my book from Becky and Roger yesterday to lead her in the prayer for her salvation. And I used that 201 book. So as you're studying and going through and spiritually maturing, remember what worked for you, because those people are going to reach out to you in the same way to find Christ. So to go through the gospel, do you want to read this? Just a summary of the gospel?
Yeah. So, the background is that God is our creator. God is holy. He is just, which means He judges, and He's loving. And there is some bad news with this too. Even though they call it the good news, the message, the gospel, the bad news is that we are all sinful, and we are separated from God, and we fall short of His glorious standard. And we actually deserve God's punishment because we broke His rules, we broke His commands. But here's the good news, that Jesus is God, and He lived and died as our substitute, and He conquered death for us so we can have everlasting life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so thank you so much again for your time and for watching this, and we will definitely make some more videos like this because there's just too much to talk about, and we've taken up enough of your time, so thank you.
Awesome. Take care, guys.